On September 18, 2025, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived in Mexico City for a high-stakes meeting with President Claudia Shinebomb. The outcome wasn't just a diplomatic handshake, it was a signal. Canada and Mexico unveiled a joint action plan designed to reinforce trade, energy, infrastructure, and agricultural cooperation. The announcement comes just months before the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, heads into its 2026 review, a process that could reshape the future of North American trade. Welcome to GeoCapitalist, where numbers reveal strategy. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe right now. Every week we break down the global deals, markets, and supply chains that shape your future. Carney and Shinebomb stressed that this isn't about replacing the U.S. It's about creating balance. Washington remains the dominant trade partner for both countries, but unpredictability in U.S. tariff and trade policy has pushed Ottawa and Mexico City to coordinate more closely. By aligning now, Canada and Mexico aim to avoid being forced into one-sided negotiations later. At the center of this action plan are shared priorities. First, trade facilitation, harmonizing customs and reducing red tape. Second, energy cooperation, from LNG to clean energy research. Third, infrastructure projects, improving ports, roads, and logistics routes across both nations. Finally, agriculture, aligning export standards to defend against U.S. import restrictions. The symbolic weight matters as much as the numbers. While Canada's trade with Mexico is still far smaller than with the U.S., this partnership signals intent. Ottawa and Mexico City are preparing for the storm, together. The timing of this Canada-Mexico alignment is no coincidence. With the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, set for review in 2026, uncertainty is already building. Washington's recent signals of possible tariffs and tighter protectionist measures have pushed both Ottawa and Mexico City to prepare. Diversification is no longer optional, it's strategic survival. Both countries have felt the weight of U.S. unpredictability. Canada has faced disputes over dairy, lumber, and auto rules. Mexico has weathered swings on migration-linked tariffs and energy disputes. By stepping closer together now, both aim to face the USMCA renegotiations not as isolated players, but as a united bloc. The synergy is clear. Canada brings critical minerals, energy expertise, clean technology, and agricultural exports. Mexico brings deep manufacturing strength, logistical access into Latin America, and integration with U.S. supply chains. Put together, these strengths create a buffer against shocks and a platform for new trade corridors. There's also a global context. Around the world, nations are hedging against volatility by strengthening ties with like-minded partners. Canada's recent moves with Europe mirror this pattern. Aligning with Mexico now extends that same playbook into North America, building predictability and balance where volatility has often ruled. And here's the point. When two of Washington's closest neighbors tighten their alignment, it sends a signal, not of confrontation, but of preparation. Ottawa and Mexico City are making it clear they will not enter the 2026 review on Washington's terms alone. They will enter together with leverage. So how exactly will this Canada-Mexico alignment work in practice? The answer lies in the levers they're already pulling: trade, energy, infrastructure, and agriculture. Each of these sectors is being positioned as both a shield against volatility and a bridge toward deeper cooperation. On trade facilitation, both governments are moving to harmonize customs rules and reduce red tape at borders. This may sound technical, but it's critical. Streamlined paperwork and faster clearance mean lower costs for exporters and fewer delays when U.S. tariffs or inspections tighten suddenly. On energy, Canada sees an opening. LNG shipments, hydrogen research, and renewable energy projects are all potential pillars of bilateral cooperation. Mexico is eager for reliable partners in the energy transition, and Canada brings the resources and expertise to match Mexico's industrial needs. On infrastructure, the ambition is bold. New corridors linking Mexico's manufacturing hubs to Canadian markets through ports, rail, and roads could create a continental backbone less dependent on U.S. choke points. The action plan specifically calls for cooperation on modernizing border infrastructure and upgrading trade routes. And then there's agriculture. Both Canada and Mexico rely on stable export flows for food products, and both have faced U.S. restrictions. By aligning export standards and coordinating on market access, they strengthen their bargaining position and protect their farmers. Another thing to consider: none of these levers replace the U.S. overnight, but each one creates an alternative pathway. And the more alternative routes exist, the less vulnerable Canada and Mexico become when Washington shifts its stance. Economically, this partnership could change the way Canada manages risk. By strengthening ties with Mexico, Ottawa gains alternative markets, smoother supply chain corridors, and a safety valve against U.S. unpredictability. For Canadian provinces with exports highly sensitive to tariff swings, like agriculture in Saskatchewan or auto parts in Ontario, diversification means fewer sleepless nights over Washington's next policy shift. For Mexico, closer cooperation with Canada brings access to resources it needs to fuel growth: critical minerals, clean energy inputs, and advanced agricultural products. It also reinforces Mexico's industrial base by weaving it more tightly into North American supply chains that stretch beyond just the U.S. Geoeconomically, the stakes are even higher. Canada is signaling to investors and foreign partners that it's not locked into a single relationship. Instead, it's building a balanced continental network that includes Mexico as a strategic pillar. That gives Ottawa more room to maneuver when trade disputes arise, and it sends a message of predictability to markets. For investors, predictability is priceless. A Canada that can rely on Mexico, and vice versa, becomes a more attractive destination for capital. Whether it's ports, energy projects, or joint manufacturing ventures, foreign firms are more likely to invest when they see two neighbors moving in lockstep. This isn't just about two countries hedging against U.S. pressure, it's about creating leverage. The more aligned Canada and Mexico become, the stronger they enter the 2026 USMCA review. And that leverage could shift the balance of power in North American trade negotiations. Of course, no strategy is without risks. For all the symbolism of a Canada-Mexico alignment, the road ahead is filled with obstacles that could slow or even derail progress. The first challenge is scale. U.S. trade with Canada and Mexico dwarfs anything the two can build between themselves. Even with a $15 billion partnership, the volume gap remains enormous. Diversification helps cushion volatility, but it won't replace the U.S. market anytime soon. Then comes political risk. Mexico's policy landscape can be unpredictable. Concerns over regulatory stability, bureaucratic delays, and corruption have long worried investors. Canada must navigate these realities while pushing for consistency in joint projects. Infrastructure is costly. Building new ports, modernizing rail lines, and upgrading border facilities requires billions in investment and years of coordination. Both governments face domestic budget constraints, and not every plan will survive the political process. On Canada's side, there are domestic sensitivities. Some industries prefer tighter U.S. integration and may resist shifting supply chains southward. Balancing these interests without fracturing domestic consensus will be tricky. And then, of course, there's Washington's reaction. The U.S. could interpret a closer Canada-Mexico alignment as counterpressure, potentially leading to tougher negotiating stances or new tariffs under USMCA review. Every strategic move comes with trade-offs. The question is not whether risks exist. It's whether the potential resilience gained outweighs the obstacles. For Ottawa and Mexico City, the bet is clear. Unity now is worth the friction later. So what should we watch in the coming months to know if this Canada-Mexico partnership is more than just words? The signals are already lining up. First, formal infrastructure announcements. If new rail corridors, port upgrades, or cross-border logistics projects are unveiled, that will show the action plan is moving from paper to reality. These projects would demonstrate long-term commitment and could anchor billions in private investment. Second, energy deals. Watch for memoranda of cooperation on LNG shipments, clean energy projects, or hydrogen research. Canada's natural resources and Mexico's industrial base create natural synergies, but only if agreements are signed and implemented. Third, agriculture cooperation. With both countries vulnerable to U.S. import restrictions, aligning standards and building new export channels will be critical. If Canada and Mexico coordinate on defending their farmers, it signals the partnership is entering everyday markets. Fourth, regulatory harmonization. Progress on customs systems, digital paperwork, and standards alignment will be less visible but crucial. Red tape can choke trade. Removing it could be one of the most impactful moves. Fifth, Washington's response. Will the U.S. soften its tone to keep Canada and Mexico close? Or will it lean harder, using tariffs or stricter conditions during USMCA review? The answer will define the environment this partnership faces. Finally, private sector moves. Where companies invest tells the real story. If firms start placing factories, warehouses, or R&D hubs with both Canada and Mexico in mind, that will prove this strategy is working. The months ahead aren't just about diplomacy. They're about execution. And that's where the true test of resilience begins. Canada's deepening alignment with Mexico doesn't exist in a vacuum. It fits into a broader strategy Ottawa has been pursuing for several years, reducing overdependence on any single partner, especially the United States, and diversifying through regional and global linkages. We've seen this in Canada's agreements with Europe, where partnerships on critical minerals and hydrogen aim to connect Canadian resources to European industry. These deals are long-term, infrastructure-heavy, and focused on clean energy transitions. The Canada-Germany Hydrogen Pact, for example, positions Canada as a supplier for Europe's green transformation. With Asia, Canada has been forging ties with Japan and South Korea, particularly in critical minerals and clean energy. These moves give Ottawa a foothold in Pacific markets while reinforcing its role in global supply chains. Now, with Mexico, the pattern is regional. The emphasis is on speed, manufacturing cooperation, agriculture, and shared infrastructure. Gains could be realized faster here than with Europe's long build-outs. Mexico also offers geographic proximity, complementing Canada's strengths with access deeper into Latin America and integration with North America's manufacturing base. This strategy mirrors what many nations are doing globally, forming regional blocs and near-shoring alliances to protect against shocks. Whether it's Europe reducing reliance on Russian gas or Asian economies diversifying supply chains away from China, Canada's playbook is part of a global trend. Here's the point. By adding Mexico to its web of partnerships, Canada isn't just diversifying, it's building a continental counterweight. And that could reshape how Ottawa enters every negotiation, from Washington to Brussels to Tokyo. If the Canada-Mexico Action Plan succeeds, the landscape of North American trade could look very different by the end of this decade. Ottawa would no longer be seen as simply the junior partner to Washington. Instead, it could emerge as a central broker, linking Mexico's manufacturing power with Canada's resources and clean tech expertise. By 2026, when USMCA is formally reviewed, Canada may be able to walk into negotiations with stronger leverage. Instead of facing Washington alone, Ottawa would stand beside Mexico, presenting a united front. That means fewer one-sided concessions, more balanced bargaining power, and a greater ability to defend key sectors at home. Beyond trade talks, success here could ripple outward. Companies might invest in joint Canadian-Mexican manufacturing operations, targeting not only U.S. buyers but also Latin American and global markets. Canadian critical minerals could find their way into Mexican assembly lines, creating products exported worldwide. Mexican agricultural products could move north more efficiently, balancing supply chains across the continent. Diplomatically, Ottawa's influence would rise. A Canada able to strengthen ties across Europe, Asia, and now Latin America positions itself as more than a resource exporter. It becomes a convening hub, a country that builds bridges across multiple regions while reducing reliance on any single partner. This is geocapitalist, where trade strategy, alliances, and national resilience intersect. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe now so you don't miss the next deep dive. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to these shifts. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us decode these global transformations without compromise. Tell us in the comments, is Canada building a continental counterweight to Washington, or is this simply short-term insurance? Either way, the world is watching. Thanks for watching, Geocapitalist, and we'll see you in the next video.